How many of you think $1 billion is a really big number? Just raise your hand. Yeah. Well, let me help you get there. I want you to think about the most money that you've ever made before. And by the way, if you've ever made $100,000 in a year or more, raise your hand. If your hand is up, let me ask you, do you know how to quantify $1 million in your head? Yes, because the mind can take a number and multiply by 10. 10 is believable. You're like, well, if I make 100 grand a year, 10 years from now, I'll have made $1 million. If I have 100,000 left over every year, then in 10 years, I should have $1 million. Like, so $1 million is easy to think of once you break 6 figures. If you haven't broken 6 figures, there's a chance that $1 million just feels kind of too far out of reach. Does that make sense? Have you ever wanted a multimillionaire to step in your shoes and give you perspective on what they would do if they were you? Well, guess what? I am pausing my podcast for this brief moment to make sure you have access to my cell phone, because you can text me, Kris, I want a free game plan. Literally just text 385-217-3477. And I got news for you. You can ask me a question about anything. You can ask me a question about life, the meaning and purpose of it. We can talk about finances, business, real estate, marriage. If you got a question, text me. Let's jam. If you can grasp $1 million, now imagine that you're like Nick and you possess the ability to take home $1 million a year in this industry. Nick, if you do that, can your mind wrap itself around 10 million? Yeah, if you can wrap $1 million and do $1 million, you can wrap 10. Well, guess what 100 million is? It's just 10 million 10 times. And guess what $1 billion is? It's 100 million 10 times. So if you put yourself on a growth curve where you can do this, save $100,000 a year, raise your hand if you can wrap $1 million. You can wrap $1 million. So just know that when you get there and you can wrap $1 million and you learn how to make $1 million in a year from doing these things, guess what your natural next goal will be? You're gonna go from $1 million to what? You're gonna go to 10. By the way, I know what it's like to make $10 million in a year. So when you make $10 million in a year, how hard is it to wrap your head around 9 figures or 100 million? Is that hard anymore? The mind can always handle quantities of 10. And if my net worth, for example, is increasing a very strong 9 figures this year, can I quantify $1 billion in my mind? The exact same way 100,000 becomes $1 million. It's literally, it's just digits. It's just zeros, and all you're doing is getting better at making it. Does that make sense? This is the game plan of how to retire with $10 million or $100 million, or frankly, you can take it as far as you want to go. If you want to open up therapy centers all across the country, all you actually have to do is figure out how to make $100,000 more than your expenses. And by the way, if you're making $100,000 more than your expenses, what should your next goal be? To make $200,000 more than your expenses. And this whole thing just speeds up and gets faster and faster. Now, I want to share with you why this won't work. What would you have to do to mess this up? How do you mess this up? Here are the no-nos. This is the no-no list. Number 1, spend everything. By the way, if you're used to spending money, it's because consuming is more exciting than investing. So in your mind, you can imagine the car upgrade, the condo upgrade, the house upgrade, the travel upgrade, and you've already spent your money. And be honest, how many of you know what it's like to have already spent the money that you're trying to make? If you do that from a consumption standpoint, you're screwed. You need to stop. You need to rewind and back out of your expenses as much as you can. And you need to focus on getting that gap so there's 100,000 left over. Does that make sense? Because, by the way, does it take money to make money? The easiest way to invest in your future is to have the money in the first place. You're in a position where you can do that here. So you need to invent a new line item on your budget. It's not, well, I've got my phone bill and then I got my house bill and then I got this other bill. Oh, that's weird. There's an $8,000 bill a month or $100,000 a year called investment for this year. And there's $8,000 every month that you have to pay. It's your biggest bill. But what's it for? It's for your financial future. You can get lost in this world. And here's how you know that you're in the consuming game. And by the way, I've been here. You know you're in the consuming game because you have a list of what you're going to buy next when you get more money. How many of you know what I'm talking about? Here's my advice. Take that list. And in fact, do it right now. Take your pen and paper, and I want you to make a list of the next 3 purchases, the next big things that you want with the next paychecks that are coming in. Right now, just write them down. What are you going for? You're like, man, if I had 4 sales a week, man, if I had 8 sales a week, man, if I had 12 sales, I already know what I would get. Write them down. Like, what are you going to spend it on? You're a consumer. What are you going to consume it on? Write those things down. "30 seconds. All right, who's got their list? Who knows the things that they would buy next? What are some of the things on your list? Let's hear it. Ducati. What else? What? Franchises. You can't say that. That's an investment. That's not consumption. That's investing. Pause. I'm talking about your consumption list. What's also on your consumption list?
Would travel be on that? Trips?
By the way, question. Is travel consumption? How do you know it's a yes? Because it don't make you money. It doesn't mean it's bad. But if it were me, I would say for every X dollar I set aside for investing, then I give myself permission to buy some of this. So when my account hits this for investing, when I hit the first 50K, as long as I'm on track for 100K in the year, I'll then allocate something aside. But you can't pay it first. If you consume first, you will already build the pattern of never investing. It's because of what we learned from Vegas. Anyone here like to gamble in Vegas? The worst thing that can happen to you is that you gamble and you win. That's the worst. Why? What do you learn? This is how the house wins. They reward you. They give you a feeling that you can win anytime, and then you walk out of there with less clothing on your body.
Cause even